even when we come to the coronavirus, what was the original root cause that was given for the outbreak of coronavirus? Wasn't it many that speculated around the origins of the outbreak and believed that it was a diseased food chain that emanated from China? China, a communist regime that prides itself being able to mobilize a massive state-led public health response, but it doesn't even have a basic system in place to understand what constitutes wholesome food. What constitutes good food? What is good for the human being? It is a very basic question. What constitutes wholesome food? What is food that is good for you? Science can determine, these foods are, have got certain qualities and they are good for the human being. But is science going to tell you what is halal and what is haram? What is haram? Is science going to tell you that pig is haram, right? And sheep is halal? How is science going to tell you that? How is science going to determine the factor, right? How is it going to determine? How is it going to distinguish between halal and haram? It can't distinguish between halal and haram, right? But it's man and his foolishness that tries to determine halal and haram. I.e., man thinks he's capable of deciding good and bad. But we know in Islam, it is Allah who defines good and bad. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who defines for us what is the food that is halal and what is the food that is haram. And we stick to what is halal and we avoid what is and we shun what is haram. And we know our food system is not diseased, because our food system is and a food chain is based upon that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has defined for us. But when you start defining your own food chain system, meaning what you eat, whether it's bats, whether it's snakes, whether it's monkeys, whether it's lizards, whether it's na'uz billah, anything and everything that that moves, you decide to start eating it. And then the way you deal with animals and the way you handle animals, we've seen all of those videos that are coming out of China, the so-called exotic food markets. Does it surprise us that we then see such viruses and such illnesses and such epidemics coming out, or at least speculation that these diseases are breaking out because of a diseased food chain, where a lot of these viruses are, a lot of the root causes of these viruses are being, presented to be these animals, right, that are then passed this on. I mean, was it not in the UK that we had the infamous mad cow disease, which was as a result of fruit grain, the BSE, which was thought to be an infection, right, by a misfolded protein known as, a prion. Cattle were believed to have been infected by being fed meat and bone meal, MBM, right? The cattle were being infected by being fed meat, bone of other animals crushed, right? So the remains of other cattle who were then diseased and ill, right? Or the bone and the remains of other infected sheep products were being fed to cattle, right? And as a result of that, we then had the mad cow disease. Now, this is again in the interest of in the economic interest that we're taking these shortcuts and having huge repercussions when it comes to our system. Genetically modified foods, social relationships, our promiscuity, or promiscuous relationships in society, how it's led to sexually passed on, transmitted diseases in Western society. Yeah, and so many other things that you could cite. I mean, it's not only the social domain, it's not only relationships, it's not agriculture, it's not only food, but what about the diseases that exist within economy, the hoarding of the wealth, right? The economic system, which is plagued by interest and monopolizes, right? And we can see how it has caused havoc and, it has caused misery for millions of people around the world at the benefit of a few select hand individuals. The political systems which manipulate, right, and govern and rule for the interests of the capitalists at the expense of the average person, right? So we can see economics, politics, social system, agriculture, food industry, social relationships, all impacted by the social system, all has its, output, and we can see the results of all of these systems and these man-made flawed systems in our societies. And then even when we look to, the weakness of man in the light of the coronavirus, look at the fear-mongering. And in fact, I read an article where it said, in fact, in the West, the fear of the virus is spreading faster than the virus itself. Right? Incredible. And then, have we not seen these videos going around when people are panic buying masks, panic buying hand sanitizers, hoarding toilet paper? We have seen people fighting with one another, incredible, where they're imposing on the state health service just in case they've got the virus. The fear in the society has led to an increase in racist abuse directed at people of Far East origin, and we're seeing fear-mongering and panic in this society goes to demonstrate the weakness of man, or the weakness of the values in this society. And then we see constant discussion, constant engagement about the fear on the economy, the fear of the financial loss, and a potential global recession. Not that this is not inevitable; it is inevitable. But a lot of these conversations, and there's an argument, a strong argument, that the direction and the strategy and the response is being dictated by finance and the financiers, and what is the financial priority as opposed to life and health. That is the debate out there. But it seems to be the economy, the finances, that we're always worried about. And last but not least, just the epidemic and just the fear, the worry that has covered and just spread amongst us, the panic, the fear, all of that. It just goes to show the vulnerability of man, insan, the weakness of insan, the weakness of insan. And this is a reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Mankind was created weak. Situations like this, when we're feeling vulnerable, scared, panicking, worrying, nervous, let us reaffirm, right, our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us remind ourselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us solidify our iman by reminding ourselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't panic, right? Calm that panic. Don't worry. Calm that worry. When you're thinking about rizq, put your hand on your heart and remind yourself rizq is from Allah. When you're worried about the epidemic and when you're worried about your health or your loved beings, then put your hand on your heart and remind yourself that your ajal, your lifespan, is already fixed. So subhanAllah, it is not that the fear is necessarily a bad thing or is unnatural. Of course it's natural. As human beings we fear, as human beings we worry, as a human being we have feelings. But the key thing is that Islam controls those feelings, allows us to control those feelings. It allows us to channel those feelings, and we should remind ourselves. And ultimately, through this whole episode and the other fiascos that exist in all of these different systems, when man defines and dictates and determines and tries to be the legislator, we can see the corruption that man creates in agriculture, corruption that man creates in food chain supply, the corruption that man creates in relationships, the corruption that man creates in the social sphere, the corruption that man creates in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, and overall in the world. This is a result of man and his man-made systems.